Hi, everybody. Welcome to Reverse the Verse Live, the IT group. I am your host this week, and, I said this week like it's different every week. Your host every week, content manager for global video production, Jared Huckabee. And joining us on the show today, this has been one of my white whales. I have been chasing this type of show for a long time. I started my career in IT, and while I don't do it so much anymore, I'm very pleased and excited to have members of our IT crew here from 3 studios around the world simultaneously. How you doing? How you doing, guys?
Doing good,
Doing
man.
great.
Yeah.
How you guys?
Hey, we're gonna because we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 guests on this week. We're gonna take a little bit of time. I want to go around the world, as it were, and talk a little bit about who you are and what you do for Star Citizen. And let's go ahead and start with you, Mr. Mike Jones, probably the one that folks will remember most from previous episodes of Around the Verse. Mike, who are you and what do you do for Star Citizen?
Well, I'm Mike Jones. I'm Senior Director of Corporate and Publishing Technology, and so that means I head up the IT and DevOps publishing operations. And so this is my team. I do a little bit of everything. It's changing a little bit now as the company grows, but I started with building the PCs and starting hiring people and building policies and procedures, and so now I kind of just help guide the team and jump in where I can.
All right. And sitting to your left, Paul, why don't you tell us who you are and what you do for Star Citizen?
Sure. Paul Vaden. I'm the Director of Corporate Technology. Essentially the IT director for all of the studios. And I report into Mr. Jones here, and I oversee most of the network operations, or all of the network operations between studios, and facilitate all the IT help desk and all that fun stuff.
Gotcha. Now, I want to do a clarification there. When you say the network stuff, you're talking about the inter-office communication between our 5 studios, not the gameplay networking,
Exactly.
as people have seen with Clive Johnson and stuff on other RTVs and ATVs and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Hassan. Hi. I finally
doing?
got you on a show, man.
Ah, damn!
Who are you and what do you do for Star Citizen?
My name's Hassan, and I'm the senior EU IT manager, and I'm basically look after the IT department in Europe. We've got a studio in Frankfurt, we've got one in Wilmslow, and we've got a small satellite studio in Derby. Basically, my job is just to make sure everything's working.
That's a very succinct description of IT. Make sure everything's working.
Turn it on and off.
And then, of course, no stranger to Reverse the Verse, but going back to the earliest episodes of Reverse the Verse, Dennis, tell us who you are and what you do for Star Citizen.
Yeah, I'm Dennis Daniel. I'm the IT manager here in LA, and basically just oversee all the IT operations here on LA and the West Coast, and just make sure that everybody here is happy and getting their jobs done, and then listen to these guys and having them tell me what to do.
All right, so. We always every time we do an RTV, we collect some questions from Spectrum ahead of time, and of course we'll be collecting questions live from the chat to help guide the type of topics that we can talk about and whatnot. Why don't you give us a little rundown of what your day-to-day responsibilities are? Like what's a typical day like for you, Hassan?
So a typical day is basically get in. If I've not got a phone call saying something's broken. Before I get in, go through tickets, make sure anything that's a blocker or critically needs to be completed. Get that done first. Just making sure the other guys in my team have things to do, and basically making sure they're doing a good job.
All right. How about you, Paul?
Oh, where do I start?
Mm-hmm.
Day to day, I get in, check to see if anything's alerting, and then go through the calendar, what's coming up for the day. Sometimes I'll have a call with Hassan to kind of sync up with what's going on in Europe. I've still do quite a bit of the network engineering. So, you know, running maintenance on our Perforce servers and that kind of stuff as well.
Okay. You said alerting. What kind of alerts are we talking about?
Usually it's disk full alerts. The amount of data that we consume is just ridiculous, and so we're constantly, adding storage to servers because it just grows so quickly.
Yeah. How about you, Dennis?
Yeah, we're pretty much here in LA. We're pretty much downstream from everybody else, because Germany pretty much starts off the day, and they get a full work day in, and then UK, and they're almost done with their day, and Austin's pretty much in the middle of their day. So we try to pick up on a lot of the tasks that they've already started or they need us to do, and then we kind of close out the evening. So sometimes some of our work comes down as we're trying to reorganize and reorient for Germany to pick up the next day. So we're helping, the artist teams and the engineering teams basically be ready to hand off all their materials and the projects they're working on to Germany and start the day over. And what people don't understand is that, CIG is a 24-hour outfit. I mean, everybody in this room is pretty much on call 24/7. So if something happens, we either, if it's something we can do remote, we do it from there. And then if not, then, we have to drive into the office and do it. And then outside of that, the one unique group that pretty much we house here is pretty much GVP and then narrative and, like this show. So we try to give Jared additional support if he needs it. And also the GVP team that runs a lot of the other content, that's coming up. So we're a little bit more. Whoops, that was me.
That's yours. That's your text.
That's my text emergency.
That's his Big Trouble in Little China text message.
No, that's Tombstone.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Okay.
It was still Kurt Russell.
Yeah. So that's what we do. So a lot of times we just what these guys need finished up, we try to finish it for them for the next day.
Mike, Dennis made a great point that I'd like to put to you about the workday here is not 8 hours long. It's like it starts in Germany and extends to UK and extends to Austin and extends to LA and then starts back up again. What's your day-to-day like? Overseeing that kind of handoff.
Well, yeah, it takes a while to get used to. It kind of just doesn't stop. We have a little window for me, my time zone. It's between about midnight and 2 o'clock,
right, when
it's quiet. And we don't, the other thing is these guys here talk about the things that they do, but a lot of it, what we do is responding to emergent issues or, system down or communication failure or some kind of a server not responsive, things like this. And we don't have an internal NOC yet, like a 24/7 team that responds to those types of things. So for now, I'm it. And so if anything happens in one of the other time zones, or maybe they get they can't publish a build, or they can't see a particular network share or something. If it's bad enough, I'll get the call, and then that means I typically, because I have a pretty good idea of who could solve what in what time zone the quickest, and so I start dialing out and waking people up, and so that's kind of how we handle this around the clock type thing. And I think someday we're going to expand that, but it takes a lot of people to be able to man a 24/7. So the guys here, I mean, this team in particular really does spend a lot of extra hours. We have our normal time that we come into the office, but I can tell you that there's not very many times during the day, even on weekends, that I can't send out a message and one or more of these guys will be right there on it and able to respond to an issue.
Now, besides your day-to-day, we talked about regular kind of day-to-day stuff. Every year, one or more of you has to step outside the regular day-to-day and help with something called CitizenCon. And then that's where I get most of my interaction with you guys, either CitizenCon or the big Gamescom events we've done in the past, PAX East, PAX South, our events. Each one of you have been the forefront point person on one of our major events at some point. And talk to me a little bit about what that experience is like. Let's start with you, Paul.
Well, yeah. So my first experience at Cloud Imperium was I started about a month before we did the PAX Australia event, and part of my role is that I am at all of the public events. So I got, a phrase we like to use here is drinking from the fire hose. So my introduction to CIG was, okay, get everything ready and ship it all off to Australia to do an event out there. And I was like, what's an event? But it's probably one of the most rewarding experiences in my career, because each event has its own separate challenges, and just being able to show up and know that I've got the one of the best support teams available to really come in and just to describe the situation is we generally get access to the event space the day before, and so we have to come in and set up. Recently we've been doing a whole lot of multiplayer demos, so that's a 24 PC LAN. Plus we've got demo machines that for player demos, but also the on-stage demo machines. We have to network all of that. And then we generally have to have always have to have a method of getting the latest updates, the latest updated builds. One of the I don't know, insider information about the events is we're usually getting new builds right up to about an hour before the event starts.
I don't think that's a secret.
Yeah. And that because the events aren't punctual, we don't normally start exactly on time, but that's because
We did last year.
Yeah, that's true.
We did in
And we ended on time too.
2014.
First time we ever ended on time. Sorry, go ahead, continue.
But yeah, and the reason we do that is it's a very clear message from Chris is that we want to show the best stuff that we can, and so the whole team, the whole company really kills itself to get everything in and working so that we can show off this stuff to the fans and the backers. And so there's been a couple of shows where they were literally typing up the PowerPoint 5 minutes before he was going on, and
which was 30 minutes after
changes.
he was supposed to be.
Exactly. And so it's just a very frenetic, but having the team that we have, it allows me a lot of confidence to know that when our event planner says, hey, you're only going to have a day ahead of time to set up at this venue, I'm like, okay, that's fine, because I know that the team on this call has all done it before, plus many of our other IT staffers have all been parts of the events at some point, and it's like a commando strike team. We come in, lay everything out, get it all working, and then just start pulling builds and getting everybody going.
Right. I want to start getting to the community questions here real quick, but I don't want to. Before we leave this topic, real quick, Hassan, if you had to pick your favorite or craziest Gamescom memory, what would it be?
It'd be the time I got locked into the Gamescom venue and none of the security guards would allow me to go out because would set the alarm off. I vowed that I'd never do a Gamescom after that, and yeah.
Were you locked in there overnight?
Yeah, I was locked in overnight.
And
So I just walked around the whole venue by myself with 4 security guards behind me, watching my every move.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a Home Alone episode, right? You know,
Yeah,
did you guys
because-
like drive like the golf carts around and?
Oh no,
And
there's no golf carts. It's as you know, it's a big venue, and
Oh, it's
you
huge.
can clock up loads of miles and kilometers just going from one side to the other.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
One of the years I was gonna say, the year after that, after he vowed he'd never do another one, he was out doing it again
Yes.
and sharing a room with me. And on the flight over, I had sat next to some person that had a very bad cold or flu or something, and I was in just a bad state the whole time. And I really feel for Hassan because I was coughing all night. Neither of us got any sleep. But about the size of the venue, I had a Fitbit at the time, and on the last Gamescom that we did, it said I walked 18 miles in one day,
wow.
just going around the venue.
And Dennis, you've done 2 Citizen Cons here in LA.
Yeah, we did one in 2014, 2016. I think I'll try to make this quick, but I think one of the craziest things we did is that it was in 2014, and we didn't have a big setup like everybody else, but we didn't have access to the venue the night before or anything like that.
All the same day that year.
Yeah, and I think you were there that time, and Sean Tracy was tweaking the build, and there was a door that just wouldn't work, and but we needed the system at the venue, so I called into one of the head producers at the time, and I said, somebody just hit Sean Tracy over the head, knock him out, grab the system, get in the car, get over here. It's LA traffic. You're not going to make it in less than an hour. And so they did, literally, because poor Sean was up like for 24 hours trying to solve this one door issue. And they threw him in the car, threw the system in the car that had the build on it because the network wasn't fast enough to transfer it. And as he was driving over there, he like woke up from sleeping in the car because he hadn't slept. And he slept for 20 minutes. He goes, I know how to fix it. I know how to fix the build and save the show. So he called his buddy in Austin who made a quick fix. And then we barely got the system there in time and got it all hooked up and got it to work. But that show started on time.
Yeah, that's right.
2014 started on time. And but it was just nerve-wracking because we had nothing. I mean, Chris, of course, talking, but there was nothing for him to show that he was talking about, and that was the most intense.
And Jared, I'd like to top that.
I was going to say you were there at the biggest Citizen Con of all time last year.
Well, no, but I wanted to go way back deep in history.
Okay.
We did one in Boston, 2013,
PAX
and
East.
that one was kind of famous because it started so late. And I think I may have told the story before, but it's so fun. Everybody's out here chanting, we want Chris, and trying to get the thing to start. And we had similar problems, right? The build, something was wrong, and the build wouldn't run, wouldn't connect to the server or something. And so it was getting so late that Chris actually started coming out and talking. And like we usually do, we have those black like tablecloths over the tables, right, to make them look a little nicer than just a bunch of tables with legs. And what people don't know is that we had a server engineer underneath that table, hidden underneath that tablecloth. He was coding the fix while Chris was talking. And so the minute the compile finished on a local, he was able to, Chris was able to start logging in. Well, in the meantime, while that's happening, we're in the back copying the fixes out to the rest of the demo machines while Chris is loading up the game. So hopefully we can get it done in time. It did start late, but that's kind of the beginning of it. And then everybody, I remember, kind of just expected them to be late.
Yeah, but I hadn't planned on offering a story here, but I think everybody knows my most famous event story is probably Red One, and we learned a good lesson that day that Chris needs a monitor on stage where he can see all of the machines. We didn't have that year and from the years before, and what was happening that year was I'm up in the Eagle's Nest. I'm up in this it was literally an eagle's nest. It was built up on scaffolding above the stage, and I'm up there with all the video feeds calling the shot. It was a 10-person demo, our biggest demo we'd done at that time, and Chris has everybody's positioning memorized. Like, he knows where every single player is supposed to be at every single moment in that demo, and it was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. But what he couldn't see was that the demo units were crashing. You know, there somebody was blue screening, somebody's Hornet was caught in a flat spin and couldn't get out, and he's calling the shots down there from memory without being able to see them. It's like, go to red 1, go to blue 2, and I'm like, and I'm up there like, nope. I'm not putting a blue screen to death up on screen because Chris is telling me to do it. But I'm up there and I'm like, but he's on stage telling people, Jared, red 1, Jared, red 1. And I'm like, no, I'm not giving you red 1. He's blue screened. He's stuck in the thing. And he got it. We didn't have a way to communicate. I mean, we learned a lot on that show.
Yeah.
You know, now he's got an earwig. Now he's got monitors and stuff like that. But it was comforting. Afterwards he goes, let's run it again, and Jared, you just have to do the call. And when the thing was done, I threw my headset down. I ran down, you know, fans are flocking, Chris or whatever. I cut through every fan, and I just got to Chris, and I thought I'm dead, I'm out. It's like, he, you know, what's going on? And he looked at me and he goes, were the builds having problems? And I went, yes. And he goes, so you made the right call. I'm like, yes. He goes, good job. And I'm like,
here's a joke on that. That we were in LA watching, you know, and you know, we were celebrating, you know, and so we had a drinking game. Every time Chris said red 1, we'd take a shot. so halfway through it, we were actually, you know, feeling a little loopy, but yeah, but it was still a good show, I thought.
One thing about the events that Dennis reminded me of is that one of the challenges we always face is that most of the places that we have these events are theaters that don't have really if they have an internet connection, it's like a not much better than dial-up, because it's generally for their POS systems or their manager to get email. And so one of the big challenges, in fact, one of the years we had a solution that ended up evolving into the differential patcher because we couldn't pull
Thank you.
we couldn't get the builds pulled over the connection fast enough, and one of our network engineers, Mike Pickett, started, you know, figuring out how to do these differential pushes so that we weren't trying to download a whole 40 gig build over a 20 meg or 20 megabit pipe, and so it's really interesting to me how, you know, solutions that we come up with for events and just inter studio traffic get evolved to the point where they're actually being used in the game. It's just, you don't normally see that.
Yeah, but I think what most people don't know is like how much we actually work on the events outside of, you know, what our daily tasks here. There's a lot to do here to keep people's systems up, but, you know, we're a team of like, you know, 7 or 8 guys, depending on what era you're talking about. Sometimes it was even as low as 5 or 6, but we ran all the technical back end for every show. And you know, and it's intense, you know, and it's rewarding, but that's a huge part of what we do.
I will have to remind us on that. After that second Gamescom, we're leaving. He's like, I'm gonna put in my vacation request next year for next year. And a week later, a year ahead of time, he had his vacation request in. He goes, I'm out.
But he wasn't out. That's the whole.
He
wasn't out. It doesn't matter what you request.
Mike, did Tyler bring you your Quantum Questions crown?
Yeah, he's so proud of this crown. You know, it's just every place I go, he brings me this to point out that I'm the champion. But you know, it's kind of it's just a paper thing. He made it, but he's really proud of it. So I always display it with, you know, and show everybody I'm happy with this thing. But it's kind of janky.
I mean, it should at least be gold, right? What's up with that?
Well,
We're a
but, you know,
crowdfunded company. We're on a budget.
It's a
Yeah,
piece
that's
of
true.
our history, so we do save it.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get into some of the backer questions. Remember, guys, you can submit your questions for consideration by prefacing your question with the word question in capital letters surrounded by brackets. That'll help us pull it out from all the regular conversation. We've already got a couple that we've been collecting throughout the show. The most voted up question on the Spectrum thread was one that didn't surprise me. A lot of Star Citizens are tech heads, are people who build their own computers. The number one voted question was, what is the current standard dev PC for CIG? What are we looking at stats wise? Who wants to grab it?
It's pretty much
All right.
Mike.
I'll so it used to be all me. Now everybody contributes to this, but we set up a new build for CitizenCon. We try to keep our builds really current, like the really high-end gaming PC builds. Chris is pretty specific about making sure that we have really high-end stuff because we want to, we're developing for gamers. So anyway, for CitizenCon, we wanted to put our best foot forward, and so we ended up going with the 8086K, and that thing has a 5 gigahertz turbo boost. The build came out great. So it's a 6-core, 5 gigahertz. I think we have 32 gigs of RAM. It's ASUS tough motherboard, and it's of course got our all-in-one water cooling solution. And Intel gave us Optane drives, so that made the boot really fast. Anyway, the thing is, that build came out so good that as developers started coming in, in prep, the day before the show, they show up, and then they'll sit down. We'll set up a few machines for them to work, do their last minute preps and things, and they're like saying, "Whoa, what is this thing? You have to give me the spec. We'll send it to Hassan. I want a machine like this, built exactly like this for when I get back, because the game hasn't run better." So, in fact, with that build, we haven't even really had to worry about the super high end having the greatest video card. So we have a good mix of a lot of different video cards because the build's just really stable underneath, and it. Of course, the game has improved, but so I hope that answers the question of our kind of basic spec. I will say though that we don't do all machines that way. So we do have a good mix of the different video cards. We try to have a decent smattering of different motherboards and configurations so that we can have some semblance of compatibility testing, especially within the QA department. We'll put a lot of different configurations together for QA, and oftentimes they'll ask us, can you swap this out? Because we're getting a lot of community complaints about this particular setup. We'd like to set that up so we can verify and get better information to the devs.
One of the other questions that came through says, what are some of the unique infrastructure problems you deal with pushing large game builds across the world all day long?
Pushing large game builds across the world all day long.
Storage, speed,
latency.
Yeah.
Latency is the biggest hit, because going from Austin to the UK and Frankfurt, the latency. I mean, it's a physics issue. You can't get faster than the speed of light, and so just that latency causes a lot of issues for us. There's a lot of different technologies that we've tried that don't really react well to high latency connections, and so that whole process of getting the builds out to the studios is again something that came from the Gamescom/CitizenCon events. It's the precursor to the differential patcher. We developed it internally, the copy build system, where when the build is finished here in Austin, it sends it out to the other studios, but it does it in a differential packaging to where each studio is only downloading the things that have changed since the previous build on a binary level, which gives us a lot better speed at sending that kind of data across. And then once we had that completely finished and refined with the copy build, they took that and morphed it into the differential patcher.
Yeah, and bandwidth doesn't. We have a lot of bandwidth, but in these distance problems aren't solved by bandwidth.
Yeah.
Another thing I will add, I mean, for anybody who really wants to geek out,
Let's do it.
we also when we move builds across long distance, we cache them, much like a proxy server methodology. So that way, the first person that pulls that differential, the next person doesn't have to pull it over distance. They pull it from their local, which means it's much faster. It'd be like land speed for them. And so, a combination of solutions, we just keep refining, keep improving. But what it has done is, it's like I've said before, every challenge that we get and we eventually solve it, we think, wow, this is going to give us some real some real headroom. So now they're not going to bother us about that again. Well, the minute that you give them this new solution, then suddenly, that means that now instead of doing 8 builds a day, we can do 24 builds a day. And so suddenly you're back up against the same thing, and we continue to tune.
So much of what you guys do is, quite frankly, making it possible for everybody else to make Star Citizen. It's like I said, 5 studios around the world. Coordination with we've had a lot of third-party developers over the years. I mean, lots of communication basically is primarily possible by what you guys do. What kind of you mentioned earlier how part of your day you come in, you look for alerts, you look at ticket systems. Hassan, you support our largest studio there in the Manchester office, or the Wimsell office. I'm trying to think of what I'm trying to get at here. What is it like?
It's okay. Just tell us.
Yeah, be honest.
We won't bite.
How do I manage it?
Yes, it's basically what I'm trying to get at.
He's a god. He's literally an IT god. I don't know how he does it. It's insane.
I sometimes ask myself the same question: How do I manage it? But no, I guess as you know, with the staff here, they're very capable of self-managing. But with 250 odd people, it does come to the wire with managing or trying to fix different problems at the same time for 250 odd people. But the team is growing. We're up to 3 people in the UK, in the Windsor studio, and we've got 1.5 in the Frankfurt studio, and we're ever expanding. But yeah, as things as things develop more, and people ask for more requests and asking for more information. It's coming to the point. I've got white hair now. I thought I wouldn't get any white hair. I'd go on to grey, but my hair's going white, so I'm getting to that point where, yeah. So it's a good fun. Don't get me wrong, and that keeps me going, and that pressure and that challenge, it keeps the fire alive.
To toot Hassan's horn for him, that studio has really had explosive growth in the last year and a half, and it kind of caught us by surprise, and just the fact, because up until last week, Hassan was supporting that whole studio with just him and our other IT guy there, Kyle, and the amount of it's difficult to describe the workload that they have had to deal with. But we've gotten an extra help desk guy in there, Nathan, and we've got 2 more slots open out there to try to get him a lot more support, because 250 people for 3 support staff is quite a bit.
And the thing is, it's ever growing as well. So
yeah.
That's what I want to follow up on. You said growth. The UK office has expanded tremendously over the last couple of years, but it's not just the UK office. The DE office has expanded. Austin's going through an expansion right now. Mike, you've been here for a long time. Talk to me about how you support, the studio, the addition of the Derby office even. What's it like? How have things changed from when you started to now as we just continue to grow and we continue to expand to bring these two games to life?
Well, I guess when I got here, I was the only one. Company was much smaller. We were just building out the LA studio, and shortly after that, we got the UK office. In those early days, it was not easy. We didn't have really very much, and so and like I said, it was just me. But of course, there was a lot less people. So we putted around, and sometimes we'd hire some contractors to help out a little bit, but we very quickly grew the team. One of the things that we figured out was that with a company growing this fast, we have to get real with our infrastructure and the hardware, especially where it comes to network connectivity, connecting the studios, firewalls, switches, things of this nature, really to build out a robust network. It didn't take very long for the company to not be very happy about downtimes. So what we started doing was we built a standardized this is your basic package of the minimum gear that you need for a studio to hook in, right? So that you can make it part of the mesh. And so when other studios started coming online, it was easier then to say, here's your basis. What are your other requirements? We'll add to it. And so Paul was a big help with that, with his experience in network engineering and design. Mike helped a lot of kind of a coordinated effort as everybody came together. But then what that meant was we started establishing these like systems. So it really becomes really a matter of delivery time, planning the time to get the equipment in, and then another big one is ISPs. Especially when you talk about different countries, sometimes it takes a really long time to establish that fiber network presence. But once we usually have everything lined up and pre-programmed, so once we hook in that network, they pretty much come online. And nowadays, with the systems that we have in place that Paul has been talking about a little bit, it's a lot easier than that even. It's really just a matter of, we even have smaller subset packages. So, like for example, if we want to do, you could even set up, this is an extreme example, but you could even set up a CitizenCon as a mini studio. So we'll hook up the security tunnels, we'll hook up all the networks so that way we can deliver, the build packages, but also any other kind of normal communication. It really helps the devs that way, so that when they sit down, they can just log in. They don't have to worry about things like VPN clients and this and that. So I guess if that gives you kind of an idea of how we do it, at least in overview. Of course, if you let me, I can go into a lot more detail, but I think that is a pretty good idea.
Yeah, that crash cart kind of thing that we did, that's what the Derby studio started with, is that we had come up with this design for one of the public events to where we could have just anywhere, just boom, set up, here's a quick mini studio. And the Derby studio started off pretty much just as a remote mocap shoot. And so we sent it down there, and when they actually leased the space and turned it into a studio, we had very little to do to upgrade it to make it part of the long-term group. It was basically buying an extra infrastructure switch, and that was it.
So we're a global operation, of course, but every studio has some unique aspects to it as far as what they focus on, unique challenges, things that, like Dennis mentions, GVP is one of the things that operates almost primarily here in UK, I'm here
LA.
in the UK, LA, and you support. What are some of the unique challenges that you there? Not, I don't want to say challenges. What are some of the unique aspects of your job in each individual studio? Start with you, Hassan.
Like you said, LA with GVP, I think the UK is just purely a development studio where we just we've got a team of artists, team of programmers, just concentrating on developing the game most of the time. Whereas
Two
Austin,
games.
well, yeah, two games. Whereas Austin are the back end, or basically they deal with the build system and whatnot. So basically, the whole infrastructure starts from Austin. And uniquely, the UK studio is the one where we got the most developers developing the games.
Yeah, we started off with each studio kind of having its own niche kind of thing where, LA was video, Austin was, core operations, and DE was mainly, game engine and internals, and UK was mainly art and some design and some programming, but just the scale of the UK office now, I mean, they do everything there. Mocap was the other thing that was mainly UK. But yeah, that's not so much the case anymore, where each studio has people in every discipline of the game making process. But yeah, I would say the fact that most of the tech comes out of Austin, where we've got the build system, we've got our source control system, all of that's housed here in Austin.
One of the questions in the chat says, "Are you a Cisco, Palo Alto, or Fortinet?" It's Fortinet. That's how you.
Fortinet.
Fortinet type of guy.
We're Cisco. Cisco infrastructure, Cisco firewalls, all that fun stuff.
Oh, well, whatever that company is, the Chinese company.
And then another question comes. It says, "Is your department hiring?"
Yes. We have. We need 2 network engineers, 2 senior systems engineers, and then most likely another help desk here or there.
I would add that those are the ones that we're about to post or have had posted, and then took them down for a while, but we're pretty much open to anything. And so I think anybody who's interested in this kind of stuff, especially with a game company, it's different. It's not, IT support in this company is different than any other game company I've been in. And of course, it's way different than your typical IT and your typical institutions, banks, insurance companies, and things like that. This is fast-paced. You really, when he said fire hose, that's a silly thing, but you really do learn fast, and the challenges are different. But yeah, everything from all skill sets, junior to senior. One of the things that one of our system engineer positions should have a focus on Linux. And this is just because a lot of our support infrastructure and servers, a good 50% of it runs on Linux. So I just want to encourage everybody, if you've got an interest, you should send in that resume. We're looking at all of them. We can't, obviously we can't take everybody, but can't hurt to try.
One of the phrases that we hear a lot over the course of development, and we've done hundreds of broadcasts over Star Citizen development, we hear the term Perforce a lot. Talk to me a little bit about what Perforce is and why we use it as opposed to other CVSs like Git or something like that.
So Perforce is a revision control system that it's a document repository in essence, where if you think of it like a library, you check out a file to edit, and then you check that back in, and so and it keeps track of all the revisions. So if you check out a file and update a paragraph, and then you resubmit it, then that's version 2 of that. And if you decide, I really like that previous version, you can check out revision 1 and make that the current active. So in development, of course, instead of, documents and stories, it's all code and scripts and
art.
artwork and stuff like that. The main reason we use Perforce, well, it's a really robust system, but most of our senior developers, like I've been in the industry for 25 years now, and back then Perforce was by far the best revision control you could use in games. SourceSafe and CVS were some of the other ones that were problematic, let's say. And so I think that's one of the reasons why Perforce has remained one of the de facto standards in the game industry, at least, for revision control. Git is absolutely a very good system for that, but we're fully embedded in Perforce, and trying to convert to Git would be a very monumental task.
Well, and then the developers being in the game industry and Perforce being the standard, it would be a big jump for them to make that transition as well.
There's a knowledge level.
We do have specific small applications where we use other source control systems like Git. So, it's on a, like, outside the game reasons, right? You may use it for controlling configurations on certain infrastructure and things. We can, so we'll specialize that use case.
Yeah, we don't exclude anything. Like if Git is the best solution for what we're trying to do, we use Git. Perforce is the primary repository for source code, and everything we need to build the game goes in through Perforce.
One of the questions in the chat came through is, have you tried turning CIG on and off again?
Yes,
multiple
actually.
times. Yeah.
I do not recommend it.
Yeah.
That was a long night.
What's your? We've all worked places before. CIG's. I don't think I'm telling any tales out of school that CIG is a pretty unique place to work. What's your fondest memory of working for CIG at this point? What are the things that you're most proud of as far as our worldwide distributed development, making this massive beast move?
Just making him move.
I think that one of the biggest things for me is the amount of support, the amount of infrastructure, the amount of work that this IT team does with the small number of people and the size of this company. To me, that's probably one of the biggest achievements. There's a lot of little things that we could talk about, but we run on a really thin crew, and that's because we have very experienced people. I'm talking about a culmination of a lot of different experience, not just game companies, but from all over the place. And so it means that we can work so well together. What do they say? You start something and the other person can just pick it up like they could read your mind or whatever. We're constantly doing things, making process and policy so that users are able to support themselves when possible. If they can't, they come to us, and then we can be quick about it and solve a problem. So I think that, to me, that's a big deal. I'm sure some others might have some pretty good ideas.
Well, for me, my most memorable experience was in Australia, at the PAX Australia, because it was when I really grokked the scope of what we're doing. I had worked with Chris back in the Origin days on Wing Commander, and so and I've been in the game industry a long time, so I'm not a stranger to there being fans of a game, but when I got to the Australia venue, and uh, they said, okay, well, here's your team of volunteers that are going to help you set up. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? It's like, well, these are our backers that have, they volunteered to help with the operations of setting up and whatnot. And I was like, what do you? I mean, they've already bought the game, and they're volunteering their time and energy and everything. And they're like, yeah, and the enthusiasm that they put in. I mean, I've worked in places where paid employees didn't have that amount of enthusiasm to that they had, and just the scope of that this is a game that people it's not just a game to them, and every event we go to, there's volunteers and even just backers that come up and say, this is going to be an awesome thing, and that, and then also the amount of openness that we have, since we are crowdfunded or backered. We are very open with all of our development, and that was a big change for me, because traditionally in the game industry, you may be working on a game for 2 years and nobody's heard of it because the company hasn't even announced that they're working on it yet, and they want to have a big splash at the Christmas sale time of, here's this game that we've been working on, whereas here, we're just open to everything, having backers come on studio tours, that's just all these things that were never a factor in my career previously, is just awe-inspiring sometimes.
We were before we started the show. We were telling each other the stories of our first days, and I don't know. I'm trying to remember. I'm having trouble. You had a pretty funny first day story.
Well,
he just reminded me of it.
Yeah, but what I actually want to go back to is like for me, like my most exciting day was basically, I was a backer of the game. I heard of the game. I immediately backed because the idea was just phenomenal, and I knew Chris from back in the early days when he played Wing Commander, or when he made it as a fan, not as a person. And I put my resume in, and I was like, there's almost no way that I'm going to get picked out of, I'm sure, hundreds of people that are applying for it. And I got a phone call from John Erskine, and we had a great talk, and I was like, wow, he's really interested. And he said, well, I want you to talk to our new technical guy. It's like Mike Jones. I'm like, oh yeah, I saw Mike Jones on a show. And so he set up the call for the next day. And, we started off with a little bit of a technical, talk about my experience at, Carl's Jr. headquarters and stuff like that. But what it was is that within 3 minutes, I knew Mike Jones was all in on the project, because we left all the technical stuff behind and we just started talking about how passionate we are for what this vision was and what what we could do to make it. And I was like, I was expecting a little bit more corporate organized talk, but what really fired me up was Mike's passion for the game. And I was like, oh my God, he's just like me. He's a total fan, and his passion is so powerful that this guy is going to make this game happen regardless. And I got just so fired up, and I hope I made it through the process. But being a big fan of the game back in those days, 2012 and 2013, I was like, when Mike finally, and it was a long process because there was a lot going on. LA was just kind of getting up and running. Mike had only been there for about 3 or 4 months. And he was reshaping, the IT department to take everything off and try to expand it. And, and he called me up and said that I was hired, and it was just, I just blew my mind, to go from somebody who was so excited about a project and then find somebody who was that passionate and dedicated to the dream of the game that we're making, is running the entire technical part, that he wanted me along with the ride. At that point I said, regardless, I give you a solemn promise that I'm going to work here and give my all until this game is finished. That's what we're doing to this day, 5 years later. And we're going to keep going until we're done. So that's why I'm here.
I don't even know how to top that story.
Is your annual review this month? Is that what's happening?
I don't need it. I swore a blood oath to Mike Jones over there. There's no way. I'm all in, And that's the passion that this core team, basically brings with it every single day. And that's how I know this game is going to get done, because these guys will not stop, because these guys are going to do it. It's crazy. It's the best IT team I've ever worked with in my entire life, and I've been doing this for 30 years, which is crazy. So,
all right. Well, with that, we're actually out of time already. Before we let you go, is there anything you guys want the community to know about your work, about your efforts here for Star Citizen? Anything you want out there?
I can't really. I don't think that there's anything you didn't cover, but I will say, Jared, you do a fine job. Thanks for hosting us here.
Yeah. Thanks, Jared.
The unsung hero.
One day I want to meet Hassan in person. That's all. He's gonna fly out this year, I think.
That's
finally.
right. You've actually never met Hassan in person.
Yeah, he's like my brother, but and we talk actually a lot and stuff like that. And one of these days we gotta get together. But hopefully when we get a chance to expand the team a little bit more than us guys who do a lot of grunt work. I also want to do a shout out to the John Goldstein.
John Goldstein.
Yeah, John Goldstein's is the person. He's our system admin here in LA, and I just want to say is that because our team is so small, I sent John out to CitizenCon last year for the big one in Austin, and he did an amazing job. He was working like 20 hours straight for like a week and a half to build all the systems and help everybody in Austin to get ready for that. So he's a really hard worker, and we're really happy to have him on board. So. And
Moritz and Chris in our Frankfurt studio.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Who couldn't be here with us today, but.
And don't forget Kyle.
And Kyle.
Yep.
Kyle
and Nathan in the UK.
You haven't met Nathan
and then
yet.
Chris Graves here.
Oh, Chris Graves.
We got, Chris Graves. Good old Chris Graves. He was like the first one. He started. He actually moved down from Canada, so that shows you. We'll take him from anywhere.
Yeah.
Don't commit us to that, Mike. All right, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I know having the IT crew on as a guest, it might seem kind of strange to folks, but you guys have a special place in my heart, and I've been wanting to take some time to showcase your work and showcase your contribution to the project for some time. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that. Of course, we do have a couple promotions going on this week. You can find out all about them on the robertsspaceindustries.com website. We got a screenshot promotion for St. Patrick's / Stella Fortuna, and then of course we have a couple unique ship promotions going on as well at the same time. So check those out. For Reverse the Verse, I'm Jared. That's Dennis. That's Mike. That's Paul. And that was Hassan. We'll see you next week, everybody.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching. For the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42, you can subscribe to our channel, or you can check out some of the other shows, and you can also head to our website at www.robertsspaceindustries.com. Thank you very much for watching.